Hey guys, my name's Echo Kellum. I play Curtis Hull, aka Mr. Terrific, on CW Arrow, and you're listening to Kneel Before Pod.
Kneel Before Blog presents Kneel Before Pod.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Kneel Before Pod, the only podcast rich in rare earth elements. After our long discussion on Pacific Rim, we're now here to bring you a discussion of its sequel, Pacific Rim Uprising. Back for another round of Monsters v Robots is Kat.
Hello.
Hello. How are things?
Very good, thank you. I just came back from the cinema. I just watched Pacific Rim 2, so everything is very fresh. I have a lot of emotions, so let's unpack them while they're bubbling up.
Is it fresh yet fading by any chance?
Well, we'll discuss this.
We'll see.
We'll discuss this a little bit.
We'll see if you even remember having seen the film by the end of the podcast. See how quickly it leaves. So, without spoiling, what did you think of it? Worthy sequel? Rubbish sequel? Okay? Somewhere in between?
It wasn't nearly as iconic as the original, but as a sequel, I thought it was solid. I thought it builded on the story and kind of the mythology of the world quite nicely. It introduced some really interesting new characters. We saw some familiar faces turn up again. The storyline is once again completely ridiculous, but it makes sense in universe, and so that's fine. It felt very 2018. Not always in a bad way. I don't mean to trash it by saying this. There's some dated memes which feel slightly out of place, particularly in the context of this is an alternate version of our world. And so to imply that these memes exist in the Pacific Rim kind of world is a bit jarring. I wasn't sure what to make of it. But we'll get to that later. They do add to the tone of the film. There's an element of comedy that's stronger, I think. The demographic definitely skews younger, and you can tell. It's definitely intended for a younger audience than the original film was. And that's reflected in the age of the new characters who are teenagers. Ultimately, that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just a very noticeable difference. Tonally, the two films have quite a different feel to them. Not necessarily bad, but just, it is what it is. How about you? What did you think?
I liked it. Along the same line as you, I kind of thought, it's not as good as the first one, of course, but it was way better than I expected it to be.
Oh, for sure.
It's very well paced. The characters are serviceable enough. Although I do think there's an awful lot going on. There's far too much going on. There's too many ideas in there, and it's pick one and run with it.
Yes.
Rather than, throwing everything at you to see if it sticks. Definitely skews younger, although the kid characters manage to not be annoying, which I'm always a fan of. I like it when I can tolerate people. Action was great, although a bit Transformers-ish, as I feared. Which I suppose was always going to happen. But yeah, I thought it was a good sequel. Set things up nicely for a potential franchise if it ever makes enough money. Although I've seen it twice, and I was one of 10 people in the cinema each time, so...
Yeah, we'll see.
Based on my very limited cross-section of box office checking, it's probably not going to do all that well. Unless it, shoots to high figures in China. I think it did reasonably well in the US as well. I'm sure I read that it stole the box office from Black Panther that weekend.
Oh, interesting.
Potentially. Although that's Black Panther and it's 6th week or something like that, so some diminished returns are to be expected. Yeah. But it was decent. I really enjoyed it, much more than I thought I would.
Absolutely. I had a really good time. I think at no point did, the smile leave my face. I really, I had a good time throughout, and that's definitely better than what I thought it was going to be. So definitely props for that. And as you said, the children were not annoying, which I was kind of worried about going into it, knowing that, there's a bunch of 15-year-olds in there. I'm like, I don't know about this. Yeah. But actually they were all kind of decent characters. I liked where they took the story. As you said, a good setup for a franchise if, that is in the cards. They have the option to do it. Very few qualms with it story-wise, I would say. As you said, there is a lot going on, and that's one of my issues. But we'll get to it in the spoiler territory because I want to talk about it specifically. Yeah. But yeah, overall, I think we both went into it with a sense of dread, as reminiscent of the last podcast we recorded of for the first film. We were both kind of feeling like this had better not be terrible, and it wasn't. It's not Pacific Rim, it's Pacific Rim Uprising. And, that says a lot. It's fine. Yeah, so on that note, are you ready to do a neural handshake and get into spoilers? Just dig deep. Let's do it. Good, okay. I will initiate this neural handshake.
Pilots, ready to connect. 2 pilots engaged in neural bridge. Ready to activate the Jaeger in 3, 2, 1.
Okay, that was successful. Now we can talk about whatever we want.
Woohoo!
We're safe in a giant machine and no one can mess with us. So
Drift-compatible buddies, yes.
That's it. Yeah.
Cool.
It'd be more interesting for the whole drift thing if one of us hated it, but that's not going to happen. So.
No, I don't think I would. I think it'd be really cool, actually.
But the rest of the podcast will be conducted inside our brains, so no one else will hear what we're thinking. So.
Yes, exactly. It's like, all right, bye, guys.
It's just going to be an hour and a half of dead air. Just be prepared.
I mean, that's something as well that they do in both films. The characters, even though they are linked through each other's brains, they still verbalize stuff.
Yeah.
Which, in theory is kind of weird, but I suppose in practice, like, you still, like, even though, say, I'm thinking like a lot faster than I am speaking, like, in order to verbalize thoughts, like, perhaps the two processes aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it's okay. And I'm definitely overthinking this 100% for this franchise in particular. But in any case, let's start with discussing these new characters that have been introduced in the new film. What did you think of Jake Pentecost as the new main character?
Well, we just switched hosts there. That was really weird.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to be the one who's always talking. So, tell me what you think, and then I'll chime in.
I liked Jake. He's very, very charming and charismatic, and John Boyega does a really good job of bringing that across. He has a character arc that's forgotten about. It just, it starts off being about something, and then it resolves itself kind of off screen, and then it's I don't want to be a ranger anymore, and then by the end of the film he's like, I'm fully committed to being a ranger again.
Yeah, like, I am definitely a ranger now. Yes.
When did you
that
decide this?
happen? Yeah. 5 minutes ago you didn't want to do this.
I liked him. I keep thinking about Independence Day 2, which has an equally generic title, The Resurgence.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think so, yes.
So you've kind of got this son of a character that was never... Well, no, in the case of Independence Day 2, he was in the first film, he was just very young. But you've got this son of a character you haven't really met before, who's supposed to carry the film. But John Boyega is much better than whoever that dude was. So it works.
Yeah.
Because whatever gaps there are in how he's written are kind of made up by how good he is at what he does.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'm not quite... I don't quite buy the whole, so me and Dad were kind of close. It's like, were you? And
were you, though? Yeah.
Carrying around his little picture, the heavily photoshopped picture of the three of them.
Better Photoshop than I've seen in a lot of films, to be fair.
But yeah, it's a bit ridiculous. But yeah, it's that kind of... Yeah, they probably would have mentioned you in the first film.
Not necessarily. I've been thinking about this in, the hour and a half since I saw the film. I've been thinking about his, like, the explanation of who he is and why he wasn't in the first film and all those things. I was satisfied with it. I was thinking about Stacker in the first film, and how what was his phrase to Raleigh? He should be a fixed point.
Yeah.
He isn't a person. He isn't Stacker. He is the marshal. He is, in charge. And that's who he needs to be to people. So, it makes sense for him, in particular as a person, to not discuss his son. He wouldn't go into it, I don't think.
Maybe before he blew himself up, he would, though.
Perhaps, yeah. That's the thing, yeah.
Marco, tell Jake I'm still disappointed in him. Or something, that'd be quite a good last word, actually.
Tell Jake I hope he's not being an idiot. Except he is. Oh, well.
Yeah,
that's true. And that is always a danger with adding characters in kind of second or third installments that weren't there in the original film. Kind of the original trilogy of Star Wars suffers a bit for it, as well, with like the Luke and Leia thing.
Yeah.
Just like adding different elements that weren't necessarily, accounted for in the first film. It creates continuity issues after. But I feel that like they mostly did okay with it. I liked the relationship with Mako. I liked, I mean, yes. However brief, it was there. I believed it. I thought that, it accounted well for that introduction and for Mako's kind of like relationship with him. I really liked that. I really liked seeing Mako in this new, like, the kind of like more, what's the word? Bureaucratic role, seeing her in a position of power, like that was really interesting. And they riffed off of each other quite well. Him as a person now, like I'm of two minds about the comedy relief. And he's really funny. And he's really funny on purpose. He likes kind of like breaking the tension with kind of comedy moments. Which he definitely, they're all intentional.
Yeah.
And, on the one hand, like, of course, like, there's people who are like that. And this could very well be a coping mechanism for, like, all the kind of unresolved daddy issues that he carries, and wanting to prove himself, but also, like, feeling like he has nothing to prove because he's kind of useless, like all of these things can be hidden behind that comedy. That does work in terms of characterization. On the other hand, at some points it felt a bit heavy-handed, the comedy, a bit, like, all right, must we right now? I don't know. And as I said in my spoiler-free kind of section, I'm not so sure about the meme situations, like when he takes some hundreds and thousands to put on ice cream and he like salt bays them, and it's like that's a very 2017 thing to do. And that is extremely dated. It works for the audience, like it's gonna get a couple of laughs here and there.
Yeah.
But in the grand scheme of the story, what does that imply? Does that imply that Salt Bay happened in Pacific Rim universe? Like, who is this guy in the Pacific Rim world? Because, like, technology is different. Like, are memes the same? What's what is going on? I wasn't quite sure about that. I don't think that they've overthought it to the extent that I have. They probably just went, it's a funny moment, just put it in there, it's fine. But it does bother me a little bit in terms of, like, in-universe, like, what's going on here?
Yeah, it's a bit like in Bright when they kind of forget that it's supposed to be an alternate reality until it's when it's convenient to do so. Although this isn't the Bright podcast, but I say that because I recently watched it and that was my immediate thoughts. Like, there's a bit where the Alamo's mentioned in that film, and it's like, the Alamo, 2,000 years ago? Like, nah, that wouldn't have happened. But I don't know. It's just one of those things. It's a very small thing, though. I don't think it breaks the universe, and maybe it's not meant as a meme. Maybe it's just a thing that he's doing, and or maybe he invented it. Who knows?
Yeah, perhaps. As I said, I think it's probably just like a funny moment that they decided to keep in there, without much, deliberation over that. And it's okay. It worked. It got me to laugh for sure. So, guilty as charged.
Yeah. And Jake's a good lead. I mean, the film is kind of muddled in that there's several people that could almost be the lead, but he's the first person you see, so therefore he's definitely a lead, and he carries it well. I want to see John Boyega in more stuff, and obviously he has Star Wars, but not for much longer probably. And I don't think we'll see him after the next one. So he's in need of a spare franchise to kick around. Marvel haven't picked him up yet, so this could be it, or maybe not. It depends on how it does, but. But yeah, he's good. I liked his back and forth he had with Nate, who is, or Scott Eastwood, who is looking and sounding so much like his dad these days. In a couple of years, we'll have a spare Clint Eastwood. It's fine.
True.
I'm sure he's already being eyed for the Dirty Harry remakes.
100%, and I would watch them.
yeah, and it's quite good because it almost means you have Clint Eastwood in this film, which is good enough, because he is quite good, although there's less to his character than there is Jake. He's just kind of there to be almost a pseudo-antagonist, but even that's forgotten about.
Yeah, there's a different relationship between the pilots and the program in this film than in the original film. I don't think that at any point in the original film we talk about a concept of like adopted family, which weighs quite heavily in this film, and in conjunction with these kids who, like, some of them are orphans, some of them have nowhere else to be. And just like the idea that they are each other's family, while, lovely and sentimental, wasn't there in the original film, and that was a little bit confusing. That being said, I liked that they resolved their, like, issues, and that really their issues weren't serious. It wasn't a serious rivalry, a serious kind of like hatred of each other. It wasn't Chuck and Riley in the first film. Yeah. Those two would never have, resolved their differences so easily. But that's because Jake and Nate don't really have that big of a beef with each other. It's mostly, Nate is disappointed in Jake and he wants him to be better. And, when Jake kind of sorts himself out off camera, then they're fine.
And when it comes down to it, they both behave like professionals as well, which
That's
you would
true.
expect in a military organisation. It's one thing that tends to happen in a lot of the superhero TV shows. It's these people that are making these like kind of life and death decisions every day, and they're bickering about petty stuff some of the time, and it kind of gets in the way. But these guys, they are soldiers, so therefore, once their crisis hits, they have to get along. They have to work together. They can't be bickering and arguing with one another when they've got a problem to solve. And so as soon as the crisis hits, it's pretty much, they work well together, they get on with it, and that animosity goes away, which makes sense to a degree, but I would have still liked to see something kind of resolved between them.
On camera, for sure. Yeah, that is a bit of an issue generally I think we'll get to kind of story level stuff later. But yeah, that kind of off-camera resolution of stuff is something that they do quite a bit of in this film.
Yeah.
And, like, it's okay if you do it once, maybe even twice for, like, a tiny thing, but if you do it multiple times for several things on different levels, I'm not quite sure that works.
It's almost like this was a 2-and-a-bit-hour film that got cut to the bone just to make whatever running time they wanted it to make.
Very possible.
It's very short, actually. I'm surprised. Mm-hmm. It's less than 2 hours.
Yeah, under 2 hours, 111 minutes, I think, yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it was over before I even knew it. And I'm not used to that, particularly with blockbusters these days. The common criticism coming out of a blockbuster is, man, that was like 20 minutes, half an hour too long.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. And that being said, saying the thing about it being perhaps hacked to pieces and stitched together to create a running time that is under 2 hours, I appreciated that it was under 2 hours. There's something to be said for a shorter film. However, could it have been done a little bit better? Could the, different strands be a little bit tighter? Could we avoid these off-camera resolutions perhaps with a couple of extra minutes? Yeah. That I think is a very valid criticism.
Yeah. Saying that something's too short it's kind of a compliment in a way, as in, I was willing to watch a little bit more of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, yes.
As opposed to, I could have really done without 20 minutes of this.
Yeah, I often feel that. Yeah, as you said, with blockbusters, absolutely.
It can be a bit grating when it's like another 2.5 hour thing that I know is going to be half an hour too long.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and usually it's like you can feel the lull in the story where it's meant to have finished, and then for some reason it keeps going, and it's like, all right, I could be done now.
Yeah.
And this film didn't have that at all.
No,
which and that works in its favor, I would say, because it does kind of maintain a good, as you said, like when we started, it's very well paced, and it does kind of, take things, from A to B to C, in a way that I thought was quite satisfying. With small issues aside, of course, but yes.
Yeah.
I was really happy to, as I said before, see Mako again. I was sad to see her go, but I could tell that that's what they were doing, even before the scene where it happens. I could tell that, that's what it was building towards.
Yeah, it was the whole, I want you to be there as I'm coming to this thing, and
and it's like, ooh,
okay, he's been set up
she's
to watch
gonna
her
die.
Yeah,
yeah.
I think they did a bit of a disservice to her character though, because the way she dies it's not that noteworthy. She just kind of sits in a helicopter and it happens, But the moment where Jake jumps forward to try and catch her, where Gypsy Avenger, piloted by Jake, jumps forward to try and catch her was well done. It did have the right emotional beat to it, and as well. And then when the finger scratched along the side of the helicopter as well, it was quite well done. I was impressed.
Yeah, I liked the scene itself.
Yeah.
Perhaps it wasn't the kind of death that she deserved, but at the same time, often, people and characters who have been, heroes in the past, the deaths are innocuous, and that's, part of it.
Yeah.
So that in itself is not so much a problem for me. I didn't like how predictable it felt. I could have done without that. And I don't know that it was necessary, for Jake's growth, for example, because I don't really think that he's a different person after it happens. It's just, like a sad thing that happens that, kind of lets this familiar character go.
Yeah.
And I wasn't super there for that, but that being said, like someone of the old cast had to die And since pretty much no one else came back apart from the two scientists, I suppose it had to be Mako. I'll say it now. I am very disappointed in that we don't find out what happened to Raleigh.
That's really weird. He's mentioned once.
Yeah.
Although, have you read
offhandedly as well?
Yeah. I think is it twice he's mentioned, maybe? Yeah, he's certainly mentioned.
Once by name.
Yeah. Yeah, have you read the tie-in novel yet? The prequel?
I haven't, no. You need to tell me about it.
Well, I haven't read all of it, I read some of it. 18% according to my Kindle.
Ooh, okay.
It tells you what happens. I mean, do you want me to spoil it for you? I'm going to spoil it for listeners, but...
No, go on, I want to know.
So, the reason that Mako isn't piloting a Jaeger is because she can't. Apparently, when in the alien universe, she was exposed to a lot of radiation, and that's kind of screwed her up a bit. And what happens is, Raleigh is exposed for a lot longer and dies as a result. So, my prediction about he dies of cancer was almost right.
Yeah. See, I would have liked... Why wasn't he on the memorial wall then?
I was wondering that myself. It was, the Russian people were there, you know.
Yeah.
Everyone else who died in the first film. It's like, no, he didn't die in combat with a kaiju. He doesn't deserve to be on this wall.
Right?
You know?
That doesn't seem right. I was talking to someone earlier, and they said that maybe they are keeping him, kind of in their arsenal to bring him back in a third film, but then that wouldn't make sense with the tie-in, because why would they publish that?
Canonize that, though. It's one of those... it's like the Star Wars expanded universe, where everything is canon until it's not. And unless explicitly contradicted by something that's on screen. So, but they didn't bother wrapping his story up in any way. It was just... No. Yeah. He's not there and Mako is, and that's it. And you don't know why. So, maybe his absence on the memorial suggests that in the universe of the film, he's not dead. So, the book doesn't have to tie in if they don't want it to, because, let's face it, not many people will read it.
That is true. It would be very disappointing for me in terms of, the only reason I would read this is to enrich my, knowledge of this universe. Yeah. And if a bunch of these details become decanonized, or if the entire book is decanonized, it's the same reason why a lot of people have beef with The Last Jedi. It's just taking and The Force Awakens as well, taking decades worth of canon information that people have emotional investment in, and then just going, nope. Yeah. Obviously, not the same level of attachment here.
No.
But it bothers me. I really like continuity, and I like it when it's done well. And I feel that mostly, the two films have a really good continuity. And I would really hate to see that being disrupted. But I suppose that depends on a lot of things. It depends on how this film does. And so, if we get a third film, I do expect it to do well in China with the co-production and stuff.
Yeah. Pacific Rim Revenge is my prediction for the title. This mythical third film.
Yeah, Pacific Rim, now it's on.
Yeah. Pacific Rim, now it's personal.
Yes.
Into the jungle.
This time it's personal. Yes.
So the kind of handling of Mako and Raleigh. I mean, Raleigh's not handled at all, he's just mentioned, but certainly with Mako, she kind of appears, and there's that idea of, there's the idea that she's important in this world because her opinion holds a lot of weight. And you could have probably accomplished the same thing if they just chucked her in a coma. If they only want her in 5 minutes of the film, or, well, relatively speaking, 5 minutes of the film. It's not much more than that, actually. Then chuck her in a coma and maybe she wakes up at the end. Who knows? But that would still accomplish that she's not there for that important vote thing. And, you don't have to bring her back. You don't have to kill her off. And then Jake's got a reason to not be that upset for most of the film. because, you know, he's just kind of like, yeah, so my sister just died, but, you know, whatever, I'm just putting on normal clothes and I'm okay now. And that's
yeah. That's how I deal with grief, somehow.
Wear clothes. Weird. But,
yeah.
So the other characters that came back, Newt and the other one.
And Herman.
Herman,
yes.
That's it, yeah. I like to call him Burn Gorman, because that's the actor that plays him.
Yes!
Both completely changed, one with good reason, the other not so much. Herman was very different.
Thinking about Herman, actually. I was thinking about Herman and why, like, and how he's just so much more open now. I've been
digging
thinking
through
about
entrails, which is something that he didn't do.
But I imagine if, like, I was just thinking about how we leave him at the end of the first film. He's you know, agreed to, like, the terrible act of drifting with a kaiju. He's, you know, kind of opened himself up to friendship with Newt, which before he, you know, wouldn't even entertain the possibility of. And I was thinking about the 10-year gap and how that would have changed him in terms of, you know, like, we leave him having, you know, attempted this. How has his science changed, or, like, his approach to science? Is he much less theoretical now? Because before he would only do, you know, calculations on a blackboard, and now he's actually, like, in a lab making experiments, getting his hands dirty, as you said, willing to, like, put his hands in kaiju entrails and things. Like, that is quite a big change, but I don't think it's unjustified. I think that it does make sense for his character to have said, okay, you know, maybe my approach to this was wrong, and, you know, like, being a bit more practical with my science will be better for everyone in the end. So, I don't know, like, I didn't mind it.
His main role in this film is they need a scientist who knows things, and it's,
yes.
You know, every time it's like, why is this happening? He's like, here's why it's happening.
Yes, pretty much.
It's just that voice that just knows everything, you know. And
him and the Chinese lady, who I want to get back to. Yes, I mean, in films like this, you always have someone, you know, exclaiming what it is. It's like, I know what it is. It is this, and if this happens, then this other thing will happen, and we need to stop it.
Pretty much. It's a necessary, if shallow, role, I suppose. But it's good. I quite like
tropey. It's tropey for sure. But I think he did a great job. I liked his haircut much better than the first film. He has improved in the 10-year gap. His style is much better. So well done, Herman. Newt is, I think, was fantastic in his character kind of evolution. Where he ends up, I think, makes complete sense, even from the first film, from the Newt that we knew. It wouldn't be a very far off kind of guess to kind of, like, imagine him turning out to be, you know, a kaiju groupie on steroids.
Yeah, I like that, and interestingly, on a second viewing, it's quite obvious from the beginning. He's quite evasive when Herman's talking about disgusting kaiju. He kind of gives a bit of a wince there, because obviously
he doesn't think
agree.
so. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think Charlie Day hams it up quite nicely. Mm-hmm. You know, it is quite a hammy role, because he's just a mustache twirling villain for some of it, which is great. It works, but. And it's a good place for that character to be. I think they could have been a bit clearer on whether it was actually him being changed or him being, like, possessed. Because it flips from moment to moment.
That's true.
Because there's that point towards the... when Herman's trying to stop him, he says, I'm sorry, this isn't me, or I'm not strong enough, or something like that. And so it's, you know, that suggests he's being possessed, but then later on it seems to be him again. So I'm not sure. But I did quite like the twist of he walks into his apartment and then there's, like, this kaiju brain piece in his room.
Yeah, ooh, like, in that moment I was like, oh, like, just, like, feeling the grossness, but at the same time, like, that, just made so much sense for his character.
Although he really wasn't
I would have
ashamed of
preferred.
it. You know,
No, not at all. I like
that. Come round for dinner.
Yeah, come meet Alice. And it's like, really, was that like a genuine invitation? Because
I want to see that scene actually where Herman
take
goes
that
in.
well.
It's like, what the hell is this? What's going on?
And Herman meet Alice, or rather, you know Alice.
Yeah.
You've met. Great. Yeah, I agree. It would have been better if there had been clarity. If it was him, you know, switching sides, or if like his brain has joined the hive mind somehow. Yeah. That would be it. Very interesting to explore, and I suppose, you know, perhaps they intend to.
Yeah.
But it would have been very interesting to have that as part of this film, you know, like a clearer explanation of what is going on. I feel like it's overcomplicated in this film in a way that the first film was not. You know, it was very kind of clear what happens with drifting, and that's you know. You don't, by drifting, you don't kind of assume each other's brain or like each other's personality traits or anything like that. So what is going on there with that connection? Are these precursors like something else? Do they have kind of like different powers through the drift? Like that what is happening, basically, is my question. But that being said, in terms of Nuke being the bad guy, it was good. It was, you know, slightly heartbreaking because he's, you know, the doofy scientist. He's likable. He's definitely likable in the first film. We bond with him by the end. You know, he's part of the team of good guys, and to see him flip around, it's kind of devastating. But at the same time, I was glad it wasn't the Chinese lady. Because the implication, the implication at the beginning that the Chinese lady is nefarious and has something to hide, and, you know, maybe she set up this attack on the city with the rogue Jaeger, etc. I like that, and I was hoping that, you know, it would turn out to be something else. I have to say I wasn't expecting it would be Newt. No. I have to say it wasn't in my realm of like possible theories, but it was a very interesting way to resolve that. Speaking of the Chinese lady, it was kind of like, you know, knowing it's a Chinese co-production kind of makes you think, well, she can't be the bad guy. Because this is a Chinese co-production, and they don't want to seem like the bad guys. Yeah. So I was like, okay, so what's happening here? She does do a bit of a 180 at some point. She goes from, you know, stern science-y / business lady to battle-trained engineer, without so much as a thought. You know, it's just kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm just gonna like help you guys now and like put my hair down and change my shade of lipstick. Yeah.
Because she was quite cold and, you know, and uncompromising early in the film, and it's when because she says about the attack, well, it worked out well for us.
Exactly.
And Newt's the one to say, "Whoa, that's kind of dark."
Yeah, like, that's cold. Yeah.
So, you know, they voted for our stuff now, so that's all good. You know, there's some good in here, and up until the point that she, you know, remotes to the scrap her, she's very kind of she's very kind of standoffish, and then becomes one of the team. And it's one of those things. She's quite
cold. She's quite I'm not quite sure that. I mean, it does work because everything's just kind of happening in that moment, and so we accept it.
It must be from that second act that was cut.
Yeah, thinking back on it, it's you know, at the end when she manages to help them and everything is fine, and it's kind of like, oh, you know, like actually I really like her, but wait a minute, like I don't know anything else about her than we found out at the beginning of the film, and this change, this 180, doesn't feel justified. I mean, come to think of it, we never really find out why she is so keen on those drones at the beginning, why this is like her mega plan. We don't really know why. She just has come up with this and has the money, and so, does it.
Yeah.
But why?
It's a good question. Yeah, it doesn't seem interested in answering it, but it gives the Chinese star some time to, stand in the spotlight for a bit, and that's fair enough. I think,
she does quite well, yes.
In pretty much every Hollywood film she's in, she's occupied that role. The Great Wall, for instance, she's more of the protagonist than Matt Damon is.
Ooh, okay.
I don't mind the Great Wall, actually. It's not too bad.
I never saw it.
Yeah, Skull Island, she's pretty prominent as well.
Oh, that was her, yes.
Yeah,
okay. Mm-hmm.
Those are the only Hollywood things I can think of that she's been in, and IMDb agrees with me. So it's one of those, quite a big actor in China, not so much in the US, but is given the screen time of a big actor in the US.
Yeah, they're definitely pushing her to Hollywood for sure.
Yeah.
She does quite well, and I would love to see her in more things. Absolutely.
I think you will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, over the next few years, I think she'll turn up in more, especially more franchisey stuff if they want the Chinese market. It's
exactly, yeah.
It's a necessary thing. It's not necessary evil because it's not evil to cast Chinese actresses in
absolutely,
Western productions. But I suppose it's in the sense of this is what the Chinese financiers want.
Mm-hmm.
Fine, it doesn't get in the way.
No, not at all.
That role could be occupied by any character, so fair enough. And maybe she was replaced, at the end of the film. Maybe there was another character that she replaces. For example, Nate's girlfriend, whose name I've already forgotten.
Jules was her name.
That was it. Yeah.
I want to talk about Jules. I want to talk about the implication.
Much to talk about?
No, she's in it for to be eye candy for I think a grand total of 4 minutes of screen time. But the implication, and this is a very queer reading of this, and I'm hoping that it will reignite fandom, the Pacific Rim fandom that I love so much. Who knows? Maybe it will kindle something. But the implication, all right, that she is kind of into both Nate and Jake, and with the added implication that Jake thinks Nate is sexy, makes me think of like a very nice kind of triangle situation that would be very interesting to explore, although I don't think that they'll go for it, but the fans will go for it, and that's what I'm here for. I'm here for the fan fiction and the stuff that will come out of it. I hope so. I hope I'm not the only one who saw this.
Well, I think
that's it.
Pushing it partly, or maybe the whole, I don't know, maybe a kind of modern open relationship sort of scenario. She's like, I've got room in my life for both of you.
Pretty much, exactly, yes.
Can their egos let there be a room in her life for both of them? That's a question for another film.
Quite right.
Yeah.
Yes, but it's true that she very much was in the background, just to be good looking. Sit there and look pretty kind of situation. Which,
push the holograms around. She did a lot of that.
Oh yeah, that is true. As an aside, thinking of the scenes that we see her in, I want to say something about the Jaegers, the new Jaegers. So I really like the names of the Jaegers. They're very true to the weird kind of naming of Jaegers that we see in the first film. We have Jaegers like Saber Athena and Bravo something or other, but Bracer, Omega, and I don't know what the third one is.
Looking them up.
Completely blanking right now.
And the Athena one, that looks like it looks like Chappie.
Yes. Yeah, I wanted to say about the designs that this is where the Transformers element comes in.
Yeah.
And it bothered me a little bit in that the original film had, a distinctive look for each of the Jaegers. You know, they were all very different looking. The weapons they had and like the different capabilities were very much tailored to the pilots. And in this case, you know, these kind of felt a little generic. Yes, one of them had a mace, and the other one had an electric whip of some kind, but they all have swords.
Yeah.
And, like, it just doesn't seem as kind of unique and individualized as the others. Obviously, you know, the kids come in as pilots because there's nobody else.
Yeah.
That's fine. But, yeah, there's no kind of, like, reverence for these like big machines. Like in the original film, the Russian Jaeger, Cherno Alpha, and Gypsy Danger, they have their own kind of bit of music.
Yeah.
And there's none of that in this, and it kind of bothered me. You know, it was just kind of like, here's these big machines, and it's like, well, Jaegers are more than that, and to reduce them to just being these big machines, I was very disappointed.
As well,
yeah,
aren't they? You know, it seems that anyone can pilot any of them.
Yes.
Yeah.
I didn't like that.
The names were Guardian Bravo, Bracer Phoenix, and Saber Athena, and Gypsy Avenger, of course.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, but I can't remember which one's which. I know that Saber Athena is the chappy one.
Yes.
The other two, I can't remember which one's which.
So the Bracer, I think the Bracer one is the one that the three kids pilot together. It's the one with the mace, the kind of chunky one.
Nope, that's Guardian Bravo.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I'm just looking at pictures of them.
I thought Guardian Bravo was the one with the whip.
No, you're right. Yeah, Bracer Phoenix is the mace one. It's just the diagram I'm looking at doesn't have the mace, so it must be an older diagram.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Guardian Bravo's the one with the whip.
The one with the whip. Okay, yeah. Yes, like, even though, like, they do have some subtle differences, they're kind of generic looking, just kind of, you know, Transformers-y.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I wasn't a big fan of this. But, you know, part of what really made the first film have an appeal to me was, you know, that the Jaegers felt like they had personalities somehow.
Yeah, well, I remembered all of them after only seeing it once.
Yeah.
Yeah, and because they were distinct enough, and even though there's, you know, well, Cherno Alpha gets most to do out of the expendable ones. But yeah, even Crimson Typhoon has, you know, well, it's the three arms and
it's red. Yeah.
Yeah. Although you do get that fanboy or fangirl moment from Athena, Amara.
Amara, yeah.
You know, when she arrives, she's like, "Oh my god, it's that one, and it's that one," and her connection to Saber Athena when she saw it, I was like, "All right, that's got to be the one she's in later."
And actually, it isn't, because she's in the Bracer Phoenix one. Yeah. But yes, I actually really like that about her, that she's a Jaeger fangirl.
Yeah.
You know, and that she really likes all these different ones, and that she knows a lot about them and stuff. I like that she builds Jaegers, and that's like her kind of thing, more so than being a pilot. That's very interesting. And very interesting to have, like, a really young girl do that. That's quite badass.
I thought she was a really good character as well. The way she, I mean, her kind of journey, I suppose, was very similar to Mako's. She loses her parents in very similar circumstances, and although her upbringing is different, as in it's implied that she essentially raised herself. Or maybe there was some kind of orphanage stuff that you don't hear about, but yeah. And there's almost that she has to learn to take the leap, because she jumps into Gypsy's hand, but it doesn't come across very well. You know, she refused to jump.
Yeah, I don't think that I liked the parallel with Mako too much here, because it's too on the nose.
Yeah.
You know, they have a very similar, too similar story, where, you know, they came face to face with a kaiju, they lost their family in an attack, it was very much, a big traumatic experience. But it was so similar to Mako's that I was like, I get what you're doing here, like bringing in this new girl, and like she is like the new face of this kind of like generation. That's fine. But I don't know that we needed to have like a very similar kind of traumatic backstory here. I don't know that it works.
In the drift, which is the same. Exactly the same.
Exactly, yeah. Like she gets caught in the moment. She chases the rabbit, as they say in the first film. He isn't able to like shake her out of it. Like
it's
all
Jake's
these
fault
things.
for not
like,
telling her not to do that, though.
That's true, and she wasn't really forewarned. That's but still, just kind of. I don't know that was necessary.
No, I thought she was good though. She bounced off Boyega really well, and she could certainly match his wits with him, when they were arguing and stuff like that. She had a lot of personality, which is good because the other cadets had no personality, or they had one distinct personality trait. Like Victoria, she's angry, or Vicky.
Yes.
Or, she would beat me up for calling her Victoria, so yeah. And the others, I don't even remember anything about them. There's one whose dad's a plastic surgeon.
That's it. That's all I remember. And then there's the Russian boy whose grandmother used to play him the trolling song.
Yeah, what was
which
that?
Is hilarious. I think that's the most self-aware moment the film has.
Yeah.
It's like, we're gonna troll you now, quite literally.
Yeah.
And make a reference to an old meme. So, there's that kind of dated moment as well.
And there was a bit where Newt says, "Oh, so we're going with the giant robots again," just as as a bit of a jab.
Yeah, it's a comment. It's a very direct jab. Absolutely.
Yeah, she's good. If there's another film, I'd like to see her progress. I mean, she becomes a ranger at the end, just because there's no one else. So that it's a very standard Hollywood heroic thing. She's Captain Kirk is in command of the Enterprise by the end of the film, because of course he is.
Yes.
That kind of journey. It's the under pressure, they prove themselves, and that completes the training that they should also have. It's like, no, you did really well. Now we're going to put you through training. Now you've got the confidence to complete training. But I suspect that she's just ready for normal missions after that, which is fine. I think they kill off two of the kids, and you don't really notice as well. When one of the Jaegers falls, it's like, oh yeah, they're dead, and I'm pinned, and it's like, we'll come back and get you later, and then they don't. But
I'm sure they do. It's just, once again, off camera. We don't see it, but I'm sure it happens.
And there's a bit of a Power Rangers vibe to all the teenagers hanging around as well.
I would say so, yes.
And they're getting in giant robots, which is what they do in Power Rangers. Which I quite like. I like the idea of teenagers rising up to stop it, to stop the destruction of Earth. And it's very expensive looking, so if you squint, you can almost pretend it's a Power Rangers movie as well. I mean, the robots don't combine, but the monsters do. So
yeah.
Which is...
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't even want to think about the physics of that. How does that work?
I mean, there were these weird cockroachy robot things, so...
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not thinking about it too hard.
No, let's just... It happened, and that's fine. That's about it for characters, I think. I don't think there's much else.
I think we've pretty much covered everybody. Yeah,
significant characters anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
So story-wise, I mentioned that I think there's a bit too much going on here, and I remember over the years hearing about different ideas that Del Toro had if he was ever to do a sequel. So it was, we might make Newt the villain, we might do Kaiju Jaeger hybrids, we might do drone warfare, we might do this, and it's like someone...
And they did all of it!
Someone involved with this film read those interviews and thought, brilliant, we're going to do all of these at once. And it doesn't work in that respect because you don't spend enough time on any of them. So I think the possible Rogue Jaeger plus drone plot is enough for this film. And then, you have the whole Newt as the villain. You could probably hint at that at the end of the film. This presupposes you're getting, more films, but... the post-credits thing could be revealing that he was behind the drone attack or something. I don't know. But I think there was too much going on, and and a lot of those ideas were interesting on their own. I quite like the idea of these rogue Jaegers cropping up. I mentioned it in the first podcast, although it was more in the context of maybe nations fighting each other because the kaiju aren't a problem anymore. But the drone thing, that's a very real problem that's facing our world today, the kind of divorcing from the humanity of it because it's a drone attack and no one cares because no one actually has to be there to press the button and kill people.
Yes.
And you get a bit of that with the pilots feeling like they're about to become obsolete. Although it doesn't do anything with it because there isn't time.
Yeah, and because the drones are very quickly kind of disposed of.
Yeah.
And then, so that's that. Okay. There's as you said, like the very quick kind of turnabout of the Jaeger kaiju hybrids, which, again, super interesting concept, lasts about 2 minutes and then is done away with, which is a shame, because I think that was a very interesting concept. I thought, so that's our big conflict here, fine.
Yeah.
And then that's done away with very quickly. It moves on to like, before that's done away with, they managed to open these rifts, and the breaches.
Yeah.
And I thought that, so that's going to be the big kind of, moment where everything feels like it's lost and stuff. But then that ends really quickly as well. It's like just too neat. And the three thingies that remain, the idea as well, this bothers me, the idea that we didn't understand what the kaijus were doing.
Yeah.
When the attacks on during the war, when the war was still happening, they were very much spaced out across the Pacific Rim, from very north to very south, and at no point were they moving outwards towards Japan.
Yeah, why would one swim to Sydney after coming out of the breach if it was going straight for Mount Fuji? Right? So,
the idea that all of these kaijus in the first film were doing this is false. I don't think that it makes much sense.
No.
And it bothers me that, maybe these ones are doing this. That's fine.
Yeah.
But to imply and to, very directly say, this is what the first ones were doing. No, they weren't. I don't know where you got that from, but I really don't think that that's what was happening.
And it's the fact that a bunch of people in a room full of holograms can figure it out in 20 seconds when it took decades of war and no one was any the wiser.
If every kaiju in the past was trying to get to Mount Fuji and then it just somehow wasn't working, why would they attack the different cities and not just, go for Japan?
Yeah, keep ploughing the same way every time,
Yeah.
And you could have almost fixed that if Herman was like, I said this before and no one listened to me. That would have been everyone thought I was crazy because I do kind of act crazy, fine, but it's one of those things, I've been watching Krypton, and it seems the L family are famous for being right, but nobody believes them, and that could be Herman. I said they were going for Mount Fuji, I don't know why, but I said they were, and no one listened. But again, that would have possibly been mentioned in the first film, but who knows. It's definitely made up for this film to manufacture a conflict. This is what their plan was all along.
I also kind of don't like how, and that's a personal pet peeve, but I don't like how Tokyo has somehow expanded to the feet of Mount Fuji. I don't know if you know where Tokyo is and where Mount Fuji is, but they're not close together. And the idea that, I thought that this was another town or another city.
Yeah.
And then somebody says, oh, it's in Tokyo. And it's like, no, but they're at Mount Fuji. That's not where Tokyo is.
Yeah.
And that really bothered me. I was like, even if it has expanded, to swallow up other towns and become this mega metropolis, which, not unlikely. Why not? I guess. Yeah. But it's just like, I don't know. It just didn't gel very well with me. I could have done with an explanation of some kind for why the geography is just so off. But maybe that's just me overthinking things again. Who knows?
Because Kaiju wasn't moving that fast, and Gypsy Avenger wasn't sitting there twiddling its thumbs for long enough. There was an awful lot of urgency to it, so it was that was kind of bizarre.
No, it was very close. Like when they all first landed, when all the Jaegers land, and the Kaijus are walking through the city, it's just, Mount Fuji's literally right there.
Yeah.
And that just is not right if you look at a map. So I was like, why? Why is any of this, not addressed?
Yeah.
On the note of walking through the city and just the destruction in this film.
Rivals Man of Steel or...
Oh my god, yes, thank you. I was just like, is this Metropolis? What is going on?
Although there was a line that cleared it all up. It was, everyone is now safe. Go ahead and trash the place. It was like they were giving them permission, but we saw a bunch of people running around a minute ago.
Yeah.
And they weren't all safe. Also, one of the Kaijus burrows through the ground. Mm-hmm. So, not the safest place to be is underground. So, yeah.
Yeah. But even so, just the Jaegers, even, these people, the pilots, they know this is a city that people live in. Can you please be mindful and not trash it? Thanks. It just felt gratuitous, and I just didn't much care for it. I'm not here for smashy smash scenes, I have to say. It was fun, don't get me wrong. I guess it was fun to watch. Yeah. But every so often, they would crash through a building or throw each other, and 3 skyscrapers would just tumble on each other, and I'd be like, oh god, oof, that's a lot of destruction. That's a lot of rebuilding that needs to be done. That's a lot of rubble that needs to be collected from the streets, just too much work.
Yeah, it's going to be a messy cleanup after this.
Yeah, pretty messy. Yeah, absolutely.
There was a bit in Sydney earlier as well where Gypsy picks up a bunch of cars with its gravity gun. And it's not clear if there's people in them. I mean, they've not checked, have they? You don't...
Even if there aren't any people in them, those are people's cars. That really bothers me. It happens in Civil War, Captain America Civil War. They just at some point, Scarlet Witch
just
starts
chucking cars at people. Yeah,
just chucking cars at people, and it's like, those are people's cars. It's like private property. Yeah. You're destroying a lot of people's property. What are you doing? That didn't really sit well with me. I have to say that the gratuitous destruction, I'm not a massive fan of anyway, whether or not there's an implication of thousands of people dying. Even, just senseless property destruction, like buildings and entire citheries. If we can minimize this, that would be great, thanks. Somebody needs to at least address it.
Yeah, I actually prefer it when there's innocents still kicking about, because at least there's more, there are further stakes to it. You're just wrecking a bunch of empty buildings. So that's that's kind of boring. So it seems like ever since Man of Steel, every blockbuster that has has property damage in it has to have that line that says there are no innocent people in the area.
Don't worry, the people are safe.
Yeah, and it's like, well, I saw a bunch of people running around a minute ago, and there was a bunch of people that never got inside a shelter a minute ago. So unless there's a shelter right next door, we've got problems here. And the fact is, okay, most of the people have gotten to safety, but not all of them. Let's that gives you that's collateral damage that they need to be mindful of. But it's just kind of we're in a building, we're in a city full of buildings. Let's just trash them all and let's use our gravity to pull buildings down and all that. And yeah. And I guess, you're going to commit collateral damage anyway when you're, dealing with things of that size. you can't take a step without stepping on a bunch of cars or whatever, but some effort to not break everything might be appreciated.
Exactly, some effort. I would like to have seen some effort. That there just isn't any, and perhaps it is because these kids are super young. Perhaps it is kind of a very last ditch battle to save the world, and so I suppose there's no time to think of whether they have to pick up this rubble after. It's like, well, if we don't do this, everybody will die.
Yeah.
Somehow, with all this toxic gas business, I laughed out loud when the last kind of conflict is revealed.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, if the kaiju blood makes contact with Mount Fuji, there's going to be toxic gas basically everywhere, and everybody's going to be wiped out. It will wipe out all life. And I just guffawed in the cinema, and I don't often do this, even with Pacific Rim, and it's knowingly ridiculous concepts. Even so, I'd still be like, I would suspend my disbelief and go, yeah, okay, this works in universe, whatever. But this is not science. This is not even remotely science fiction. It's how do you explain this toxic gas thing erupting from everywhere in the world because of Mount Fuji somehow? Please explain to me in a way that isn't completely stupid. And so, yeah, in any case, I found that to be kind of, it was the one thing that I felt was too much. If there is anything in this film that I kind of went, all right, yeah, no, I draw the line, it was this.
I absolutely loved the line that Mount Fuji is rich in rare earth elements.
Yes.
If they're rare, how could it be rich in them?
Well, because they're only there. That's where it's just congregated in that one spot on Earth in this active volcano somehow.
Yeah, Herman does name a couple of them, but I can't remember what they were. But then it's that kind of thing about, we can use them to make rocket boosters. It's like, but they're really rare. Should you be wasting them on that? Also, this film has taught me two more efficient ways than Jaegers to defeat kaiju. One is something in space that you can drop on them. Seems to work.
Yes.
I'm reminded of the weapon in the second G.I. Joe film. It's just a big rod that they drop on London and it levels it. Something like that, much more efficient. Satellites in orbit, equipped with those, no problem.
Yeah, just let gravity do the job, pretty much.
Or those boosters, attach them to the kaiju.
Fling them into space.
Why not?
Fling the kaiju into space.
Yeah.
Why not?
So there's two better ways than Jaegers. It'd be less fun.
Yeah.
And for the second one, you still need the Jaegers.
Yeah. I do have to say that the way that the mega kaiju dies at the end with the one blow, how fortuitous is that? I was like, what if that doesn't work? What if it's still joke's on you, I'm fine. And it does take one more breath before it kicks the bucket. And I was like, all right, here, see, told ya. But then it dies anyway, and I'm like, well, that was a bit cheap, wasn't it? It was, once again, the conflict is kind of resolved in a very simple way.
Yeah. And I was actually more concerned about the mathematical precision that had be involved in hitting the damn thing, especially when the booster just flies about all over the place.
Exactly.
And, they make it into the sky, and then they're off course, and it's, let's fire the plasma cannon. I think they call it the A-team maneuver. This it's not a tank, it's a plasma cannon. But the idea is right now we're perfectly lined up. Well, not quite perfectly lined up. We've must have extrapolated how fast the thing is moving, and we are lined up to hit where it's going to be. So that you're talking hours of calculations to work this out, and
Seriously?
that's when they actually have control over where they're dropping from, which they didn't. They're lucky they weren't over, I don't know, somewhere completely different.
Yeah.
By the time they get up to the atmosphere.
Yeah, I would say that this kind of this outlandish way in which it ends is more ridiculous than the entirety of the first film combined, I have to say. Yeah. It just doesn't seem plausible, even within, the universe that it occupies. It's still it rings false somehow. Yeah. Along with, some of the other aforementioned conflicts that end too quickly, the breaches that close too conveniently, the subroutine that was coded into the thing so that they can disable the drones, and just like all of these things somehow too convenient.
This automated company that builds things that no one notices are being built. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that was a bit weird. There's got to be someone in those factories just looking to make sure things are working. So would someone maybe have noticed a fake kaiju brain getting put inside a Jaeger? Mm. And the whole fake kaiju brain thing was, okay, so now they're cloning them themselves?
Yeah, who did that engineering job?
Yeah. Who's got that kind of level of biological knowledge? Because I suppose, it was kind of Newt's field, but also sort of not.
Also kind of not, yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I suppose the implication is that it was him doing all of it by himself somehow.
Yeah.
Even though he must have had help, because the entire, you have to have all the drones ready in 48 hours or else.
Yeah.
Truly, he can't have done all of that by himself. There's no way. So
I mean, they mentioned there was kaiju cults, essentially, or a kaiju religion, at least, in the first film.
Yeah.
So, they just chuck in that. He has some help from the devout.
Ooh, yeah, that would have been a very interesting strand to pursue.
Yeah, he could be a god to or their messiah or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that would have been really cool. As opposed to just all this combination of tiny little conflicts that are massive in scale, but really small within the film itself. It would have been better, I think, to give room to one strand to be developed and to feel kind of more cohesive, rather than have all these individual battles. At least in the first film, the battles, the action sequences are all building upon the same conflict.
Yeah.
They're not three different things. I think there's 3 set piece kind of battles that are, equally spaced within the film.
Yeah.
And they are direct escalations of the one before, and they all kind of, raise the stakes higher and higher to the point where, it's critical and this is it. The world is about to end, and this is it, and everything has been building up to this moment. Whereas, I have to say that the conflicts in this film don't feel the same.
No. I think the drones going haywire thing would be absolutely fine for this film, especially since you could have started with, I guess, the Rogue Jaegers chucked in there as well, because I quite like that idea of the, a kaiju brain being it's not even a real kaiju brain, it's like a cloned one, but the idea of a kaiju brain being inside a Jaeger body is quite cool. That's a cool idea, keep that. But the drones thing, so they go berserk at first. I mean, this exact same plot pretty much exists in Transformers 4, where you have this thing where they think they're building their own Transformers, and it turns out Megatron has infected them and is running them secretly, so essentially only letting them think that they're succeeding in order to get what he wants. And that's fine. But I think with this, you've got the drones, they go out in a couple of missions, they malfunction a bit, but not enough to be serious, and then as the film goes on, more and more weird stuff starts happening, and then your final climax is essentially the hybrid thing.
Yeah.
And they'll manage to open a breach, maybe, another one, and then you reveal that Newt was behind it towards the end. That's one film there. That would have been more than enough.
Yeah. Yeah, somehow this feels like 3 films crammed into one.
Yeah.
As you said before, they had so many ideas, and instead of picking one, they just went with all of them.
Yeah. Just throw it all at the screen, see what sticks, And it's a shame, because it means you can't do it again and have them all developed, because no one's going to be building drones after this.
Yeah, exactly.
But it seems like the remote control technology is viable. I guess, because what's her name, Shao, she uses it towards the end.
Yeah.
So that's viable enough, at least on smaller Jaegers. So more smaller Jaegers, more effective than less bigger ones. Who knows? I liked Scrapper though. That was the little Jaeger that could.
Yes, the little Jaeger that could. I loved the first scene of them running, in the little Jaeger, and kind of trying to outsmart the bigger one. Yeah, I was like, this is such an interesting idea in a film about go big or go extinct.
Yeah.
The idea that maybe smaller ones might be more effective because they can move quicker.
Yeah.
And that, wasn't necessarily explored. The idea, what does the Russian pilot girl say? She says, bigger is better.
Yeah.
But is it? Wouldn't it be interesting if, at the very end of the day, bigger isn't better? Mm-hmm. That would be an interesting thing to say, for a film that's obsessed with giant monsters and giant robots,
Especially when they make it clear that drift-compatible pilots are a finite resource. They're difficult to find, so that's the smaller Jaeger solves that problem. You just need someone to pilot them. Although the drift compatibility thing changed, I think, in this film, because the first film was very much about you have to be drift compatible with that other person. So in theory, everyone's drift compatible. They just have to find out who they're drift compatible with.
I mean, yes.
In this one, it's no, we're all drift compatible. It's the midichlorians. They have the midichlorians.
No. I don't think so. I don't think so. This was about creating an academy in order to forge drift compatibility, like to artificially create it. And I don't think that is necessarily in conflict with what we know about drift compatibility from the first film.
Although there is the mention of finding drift-compatible pilots is difficult, so
yeah,
it does suggest
it's difficult
that
to find them. So maybe it's easier to bring in, younger recruits and then have them build strong connections from childhood, so that then they can be drift-compatible, perhaps all together, perhaps in different combinations. If they're all, very strongly connected with each other, like a strong emotional bond, like strong friendship, or, being part of a military unit, that is also a very strong bond. And, like an artificial drift compatibility. I thought that was actually a very interesting idea, which, I was surprised that they hadn't thought of that. I suppose they didn't have the time during the war to do that. So they had to find pilots who had the drift compatibility to start with. And, that is a challenge.
Yeah, there was definitely a sense of, we've spent the last 10 years thinking about this stuff. Well, even if the writers haven't as such. But, it's the idea that, it's a foregone conclusion that at some point Kaiju will come back, so we're going to make sure we're ready this time, etc. But then when they do come back, it's just after they've had their entire military operation just decimated, which is quite funny. It was quite easily decimated, actually. By a few drones, they can't mobilize. They can't get into Jaegers quick enough, apparently. But I see what you're saying about the drift compatibility thing. I just, I kind of latched on to it's hard to find drift compatible people. So I don't know. Maybe there is a bit of both in there, but
I think it's not mutually exclusive. It's hard to find drift compatible people. Therefore, how about we get these kids in and we make them drift compatible?
Yeah.
That doesn't necessarily negate what we already know. It just kind of builds upon it in a way that is perhaps unexpected.
Yeah, and there's the that's kind of where the family angle comes in, I suppose. If you force them to think of themselves as a family, and they'll have more invested in one another. But they don't tell you enough about the relationships between the existing kids, though.
That's true, and it would have been really nice to see.
Yeah, that Amaya can't drift with them easily because she doesn't know them.
She doesn't have that bond with them yet.
Although she can't even drift with the brain that they're keeping in a jar.
Yeah.
Which
she can't even drift with Jake. She's not very good at it yet, and that's quite telling. I suppose towards the end, it needs must, and so everybody just kind of
just gets on with it,
goes for it. Yeah, it's like, well, we have no choice now. It's kind of like it's the Herc, not the Herc, sorry, it's the Chuck and Stacker situation where it's like, well, it doesn't matter. I know who you are. I can drift with you just fine. It doesn't. It's okay.
Yeah. Plus, I suppose at that point they were all united in their common cause of, killing those Jaegers.
Yeah.
And Jake had just given his really bad motivational speech.
I'm not my father. I'm not a really good motivational speaker. Do you understand? Yes, sir.
I think that it would have been better if his speech had been, "I'm not my father. I can't give a good motivational speech. So get the Jaegers." Yeah.
Yeah. I really liked, the canceling the apocalypse speech, I think, was referenced a couple of times.
Yeah.
And, I really liked that jab. It's like, Stacker was a great guy. Really good speechwriter. You remember the one about canceling the apocalypse? Yes, we all do, Newt. It was amazing. I quite liked, the self-referential kind of aspect of that. I think there was a lot more of it in this film. It felt very much like, as I said, like a 2018 kind of thing, to jab at the first film in various ways and kind of, make fun of the outlandishness. Like, part of why I like the first film is that it takes itself just seriously enough to it basically make you convinced that this world, works.
Yeah.
Whereas this one, it does kind of poke fun at itself and at the first film a little bit. Not that it doesn't work, but it kind of breaks that spell a little bit.
Yeah, and your point about it being a 2018 film, I mean, we've both made comparisons to all sorts of other kind of blockbusters, from Transformers to, I suppose the first one, which is unique in itself, and, Power Rangers, Independence Day 2, that kind of stuff. It's it does kind of borrow quite heavily from a load of other stuff.
Yes, it joins kind of an arsenal of existing kind of tropes within the blockbuster genre that I think the first film kind of didn't have as much of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or at least its influences were less familiar to Western audiences, I suppose, because of where Del Toro
because of the Japanese, of the Japanese influence, yes.
Yeah. Which is, makes it unique in itself.
Mm-hmm.
This one feels less unique. And it's interesting how quickly I kind of started to forget parts of it. I mean, came out of the cinema and actually I had my heart set on 4 stars as my rating when I came out. And then by the time I got home to write about the thing, I talked myself down to 3 stars.
Same. Yeah, like I was thinking about it as I was watching the film. I was like, oh, this is a 4-star movie. I'm having a great time.
Yeah.
And, as I was making notes after, I was like, well, actually, there's a few holes here and there that could do with filling, and there's, this and that issue that I have with it. So actually more like a 3-star film if you actually think about it. However, it is a 4-star experience. Like, it's definitely a really fun watch. It's a really good time. But I think it has a somehow shakier footing than the first film. I think the first film is a solid, it's probably a 4.5 for me. I really like the first film, and this one not so much. It's like the smaller sibling, who's kind of dinky. Yeah.
So I've pre-ordered the Blu-ray, and I'm fairly sure I'll be able to put it on just at random intervals just to enjoy it.
Mm-hmm,
I think I'll always get some enjoyment out of it, and who knows, maybe at some point I'll just skip to the fights because that's all I'm really there for. But I don't know. The first one I can happily put on because I'm kind of captivated by everything about it, and it's visually distinct. This one is less visually distinct.
Yes.
I'm thinking, like, when I think back on the first one, which I've seen a load of times, I think about, and I don't normally think about the visuals in such detail, but I think about all the colour, the use of colour, the neon lit, rainy aesthetic that's in the fight sequences and all this. And this is like, the fight sequences are in open daylight, which is, it looks good, but kind of generic-ish. There's a lot of stuff breaking, whatever, and like the locations look very bland as well. There's nothing about the Shattered Dome that feels real.
Yeah, it's just a place do you know what it reminded me of? It really reminded me of Ender's Game, and I wonder if they used the same set. Yeah. I wonder if they used the same set for the Ender's Game Academy, because like some of the rooms felt like I think they seemed really similar. And I haven't seen Ender's Game in some time, but I really thought, I really thought that it. The thing with Ender's Game, that's a different conversation to have. But it's I think somebody skimmed the book that it was based on and just kind of kept certain elements and then ditched what's important about the book, and that's why it was kind of forgettable by the end, which is really a shame because it's a classic science fiction book. Yeah. But in any case, to go back to the genericness of this film in particular, wanted to say something about the score, the soundtrack. Now, the first film has an iconic soundtrack.
Oh yeah.
Like it has that Tom Morello guitar. Yeah. The Jaegers have their own melodies, their own motifs that keep repeating whenever the Jaegers come on. Yeah. There's like the battle music is in itself like it pumps you up. Like it's actually quite powerful. Yeah. And then this one, I was listening to the soundtrack on my way back from the cinema, and it's so generic and forgettable, I can't tell you a single melody that stood out for me. And it's composed by Lorne Balfe, who is himself a pretty big name in the soundtrack world, but he's no Ramin Djawadi, and you can tell, like the best musical moment I thought in the film is the return of the original Pacific Rim theme, which is remixed by Patrick Stump of Fall Out Boy fame.
Oh God, yeah, the remix was terrible.
I thought it was great. I was like, ooh, this sounds like a Fall Out Boy song, and that's because it is. And it's like we could have a Fall Out Boy song at the end of the credits, but then we didn't. It was just the Pacific Rim theme again, which hey, any excuse to listen to that. Pretty much, it's on my self-esteem playlist. You gotta have some powerful guitar riffs. It's great.
Yeah, I wasn't a fan of the remix. I didn't think it was. I didn't think it was edgy enough. I really like how. I don't know, edgy is the best word I can think of for it, but the theme in the first one, it does sound very kind of dangerous and uplifting, whereas that one, it just sounded like, whatever.
I thought that it blended, because I've listened to it a couple of times, outside the film, it blends the original theme with, these electronic sounds that are definitely more 2018, they're very current, and that I think ties into what we said at the very beginning of the podcast about the demographic skewing younger. Yeah. The idea that even the music is very much, modern contemporary stuff, synthy, poppy. It has a lot of kind of a hip hop beat to it. Yeah. Kind of like an electronic slant to the sound, which the original film definitely does not have. If the original film targeted people in their 20s, in their mid and late 20s, I would say, this film targets teenagers, under 20. Yeah. And the sound of the film, including, the soundtrack and the kind of poppy electronic theme, definitely factors into it, I think.
Yeah, but they had an opportunity to make this franchise sort of musically distinguishable with the kind of heavy metal sound in the first one. Yeah. And, it fits wonderfully. Whereas in this one,
it's a big shame.
Yeah, I can't.
It's a big shame that it doesn't. Yeah, and as you said, the design of it, the cities and the Jaegers and the Shattered Dome, the sets, with the kind of genericness of the soundtrack itself, it all just kind of creates yet another blockbustery type look, which, is a step away. It's a few steps away from what made the original really badass.
Yeah.
And that's a shame. It's a big shame. But
and it just shows how talent can make something, something that shouldn't necessarily work really well, because
you can really tell this isn't Guillermo del Toro.
Yeah, because
you can really tell.
What you had was in the first one was one of the best visual storytellers out there, making a pretty generic action film, and him taking his hand to it elevates it to something that's far more memorable than it ever really should be. Yeah. Whereas this one, you've got Stephen S. DeKnight, who, having directed only TV in the past, the TV directors don't tend to, certainly on network television, which is, other than Daredevil, which is where he kind of got his experience, every episode has to look the same, because it's the same TV show. So therefore what you've got is a production team that are making a TV show every week, doing most of the work. And then the director, I guess, handles the performances or different little choices here and there. And I think maybe he doesn't know how to be a visual storyteller coming into this film, so he just makes what he knows and just makes something that's like, anyone could have made this. It just feels like you could have just given it to anyone that would have been exactly the same. And I feel the same about...
I think that's what happened. They did kind of give it to anyone, sorry to say, unless it's Del Toro, anyone else would have come in and made pretty much this movie. Yeah.
I mean, even if you look at, the Transformers movies, you can tell they're Michael Bay movies, because Michael Bay is distinct. Whether you like that distinction or not, he is very distinct, All of his films have a distinct look to them. Sunset all the time. His Sunset's Last Hours, for instance, because that's what he likes to shoot against. And if you think about Spielberg's Jurassic Park versus Trevorrow's Jurassic Park, there's no comparison. The Trevorrow one looks bland and uninteresting, whereas the Spielberg one is, it looks great. And it's a good showing of that's what talent can do to a film. I think this franchise, as it is now, because there's two of them, has proven that. It can be all about the talent you put behind the camera to make the thing.
Yeah.
Because the script itself, I mean, I wonder if Del Toro had made this script, it would have certainly looked a lot more interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Just a thought. I mean, I don't know an awful lot about how these things come about, but you can tell when certain films are made by certain people.
Yeah, as a viewer, and definitely, it does have to do with the creative team that Del Toro likes to work with as well, not just himself, because he's not going to design absolutely everything about this film. The cinematographer comes into play, the production design, all of these things.
But he definitely touches all those points as well.
Yes, and his aesthetic does influence the general look of the film, of course, and him being just a producer on this definitely makes a difference in terms of that. Like, you can definitely tell visually that it's just not the same, and that's something that I suppose we expected. We both kind of voiced that in the first podcast. We both said, I don't know about the look of this one, and it's true, like it does very much, lack that distinct feel that made the first one what it was, and it is a bit of a downgrade,
Yeah. Although I do want to see more from this franchise. This hasn't put me off at all.
Yeah, I'd watch more of this, absolutely.
Yeah. Although if they're going to go into the alternate universe, we really need Del Toro visually bringing that to life. You don't want just anyone doing that, because you get a glimpse of it in the first film, and it's interesting because I watched the director's commentary long ago, and he was talking about how he uses colour and lighting to convey a world that's dying. And when you think about it, it's one of those visual things that you don't really think about, but when when you see it, it does look like it's dying, and he kind of put it into words for me. But there is a kind of bleakness to it, and it's obvious, or at the very least, it looks different to the rest of the film. So I mean, what's it going to be like when they go there? Obviously, they'll have to flesh it out because you don't see much of it. So, are they just going to get there and it's going to be a generic rocky planet with purple sky or something like that? Like I'm thinking about Fantastic Four here, or Fant Four Stick, where they go to the other planet and it just looks like crap.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, we may never see this film, but it could just be CGI backdrop, alien planet, generic alien planet thing.
Yeah.
Unless it's just at the end of the film they go in or something, I don't know.
We'll see. I mean, I really wouldn't want to speculate now about where they'll take this, because who knows? Maybe they'll have a brainstorming session, come up with 40 ideas, and then use all of them.
Yeah. But the Sting does suggest that. Yeah, we're going in. We're following you. Yeah.
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 It'd be interesting to see. It'd be interesting to see what they will do, in terms of, we've just been on the defensive as Earth. We've built these robots and fought them off, and, we have not been on the offensive at all with this alien war thing. And, what are they going to build? How are they going to fight it? More Jaegers? Like, obviously, if there's bigger and worse kaijus out there, or, if the precursors themselves are stronger, then we have a problem. But yeah, that's I suppose, a headache for a different team to figure out.
Yeah. Funnily enough, it has a similar ending to Independence Day 2 as well. Because that ends with, we're going after them, as well. So, I don't know, were they just... Was there some influence? I mean, that's a weird film to copy.
Well, perhaps.
Yeah, it's not that bad, actually. I don't think it's that bad. I think it's just kind of forgettable, but apart from Brent Spiner being amazing, it's without going into the Independence Day 2 podcast, he's like, I'm in a blockbuster in 2017, or 2016, or whenever year it came out, and he's just loving every second of it, as he should. Yeah, so... Do you think John Boyega would come back for a sequel? Maybe he's contractually obligated to,
I think it will depend on the scheduling and money. What really makes me sad is that the reason there's no Raleigh Beckett in this is because Hunnam was filming that terrible King Arthur film that flopped at the... Yeah, he was filming King Arthur, and A, that was terrible, and B, it didn't even do well at the box office, enough to warrant him, missing Pacific Rim 2. So, I bet he's kicking himself now. He's like, well, I really wish I hadn't done that, but I suppose it's been done now. It's a shame. It's a real shame that, King Arthur, come on. Anyway, don't get me started on that. That's a different podcast entirely.
I haven't seen it. But,
yeah. Oh, neither have I. I've seen bits of it, and it's so bad I don't even want to. It's Anyway, ultimately with John Boyega, I hope that whatever other obligations he picks up in the meantime, because who knows how many years they'll take making the next one.
Another 8 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah.
I'm not fully expecting any of this to take a short time. And if in the middle of all of that, Boyega picks up other projects, we'll see what happens. I hope he sticks around, because I think he can carry it.
Yeah.
And he's really fun to watch, and I did like his character. We'll see.
I wonder what role Charlie Hunnam would have had in this hypothetical version. It would have been a very different film, because he doesn't slot into any of the characters that you have. Unless he's the Marshal and gets killed. At the point that Marshal gets killed. The Marshal, I can't remember his name, he's just...
The Chinese guy? Yes, I don't remember his name either.
He gets killed right after he says the words Pacific Rim, though. It's almost as if the drones were like, nope, that's it. You have to die. You said the title of the film.
Yes.
Yeah, I guess that's the only role he could have been in, though, is the Marshal type role, because him still being a Jaeger pilot, I suppose you'd have to have Mako there, and then You
No, I don't think so. I was trying to think the entire film. I was like, where is Raleigh right now? If he is alive, he is not involved with the Pan-Pacific Defense Corps because he's not there.
Yeah.
He, he has been known to drop off the grid. Like, what would lead him to drop off the grid?
Yeah.
He's just kind of like, living a vagrant life somewhere. Like, what could possibly have, perhaps, him and Mako maybe had a fight, or like they're not getting along for whatever reason. Like, I can't think of what, would be a justifiable reason for him to not be there.
Yeah.
And that does bug me.
Other than being dead, of course.
Unless, exactly. That I'll accept, obviously, but if he's alive, I just don't understand why he wouldn't be there. It's a pretty big thing to be missing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah,
we'll see, I suppose, what they decide to do in the third one, if there is a third
if it ever exists.
Yeah.
Yeah. If not, it's a fan fiction with cardboard boxes that we're making.
Yes, seriously, that's what I'm picturing. I'm just picturing Raleigh just not giving a toss, he's just somewhere maybe on an island, maybe it's not a cardboard box, maybe he's, living his best life somewhere else.
No, meaning if
in
they
the
don't
Caribbean.
if they don't make a third film, then we will do a fan fiction version where we use cardboard boxes as Jaeger suits.
I would watch that.
After making it, you would watch it, yeah.
Yes, I would make that and then watch it.
Yeah, it'd be the Swedish version of Pacific Rim, I suppose. Yeah, it'd be cool.
Very low tech.
Yeah, low tech is fine. It'd make up for it in story, of course. Yeah, so I don't think there's anything else to say about the film. I mean,
I've covered all of my notes. That's everything that I have thoughts on.
Yeah. I don't have anything else. I mean,
an interesting note on fan fiction. Apparently, Charlie Day, in the downtime between the two films, has been reading Newton Geisler fan fiction and using it as inspiration. And so that, take that and, chew on it, I guess.
Yeah, I'm not even sure what. Yeah. That must be a weird thing for an actor to read fan fiction about a character you play, because a lot of time that's not a can of worms you want to open.
And yet, I'm really positively surprised by this revelation. Here he is, actual professional actor, and he's I think he said, that he was thankful for the people who have been producing content this entire time.
Yeah.
About his character, and it's, if there's anything to say about fandom, is that often there is a very cohesive vision that emerges within a fandom about a character, and so everyone ends up kind of writing the character the same way.
Yeah,
and that's so interesting that he would read that, see it as inspirational, and go, yes, that's great, that's how I'm going to play him. That's awesome to me. That's really great.
Yeah, except from all the outlandish slash fiction that moves things around just so that certain.
Oh
things
no,
can
he actually said that he read Newton Herman fan fiction, and that that's how he played it. He played it that that was a thing.
Yeah.
I want to go back and watch the film again now and see if that is in his performance. I just really, I want to see it. But that's just me, though. I'm there for that kind of thing.
If we want a third one, we have to go and see it 10 times each. Just everyone who likes the Pacific Rim franchise, even if you didn't like this one as much, if you want more of it,
give it as much as as much as you can.
Yeah, those with unlimited cars, just book screenings and don't go. Fine, you inflate the box office as much as you can, and there'll be more of it. Buy the Blu-ray. It'll be like the Firefly campaign, where everyone was buying 10 copies of the DVDs, just to try and get it back. But
whatever works.
Yeah, it worked for that, so got it a film.
Yeah.
So fair enough. Yeah. It's all good. So yeah, I think we've exhausted this film as much as possible. More depth than it deserves, perhaps, as a discussion. But
perhaps.
But I don't know. I think it's been worthwhile. It's a franchise, and I can now call it a franchise that I like. So, oh wow, the budget was 150 million.
That's sizable.
According to IMDb, it's like wow, that's weird for a modest success, a sequel to a film that was a modest success. Yeah, fair enough. I don't think it's making that back anytime soon, but we'll see. Yeah. So, do you have any wrap-up thoughts to leave on, other than Charlie Day reading
well, ultimately,
explicit fan fiction?
Ultimately, I'm going to say, I had a good time watching this film. I know that we did rip it to shreds a little bit.
That's over the course of this podcast.
Yeah, over the course of this podcast, we did kind of find perhaps a few more holes than we originally did while watching the film. I'm going to say, it's a good time. It's fun. It's, perhaps generic, perhaps, a little forgettable, but, there is a time and a place for films that, are good for those 2 hours that you watch them. So, this definitely falls within that category. It does build on existing mythology and world building and character quite nicely. Yes, there's a lot more they could be doing, and perhaps they have the intention. Perhaps there will be more expanded universe stuff. Who knows? I'm into it. I'll read the expansion novel. I'll read the comic books. Yes, give me. I'm game. But yeah, ultimately, yes, it is worth watching. It is worth owning. It's, as you said, you can put it up in the background, on a day that you just want some entertainment. That's fine. Overall, I had a good time.
I'm the same. I had a good time with it. It's good fun. It's a good time at the movies. It does feel like a cinematic experience. It's, how many of those films are you thinking? Can you think of where you go to the cinema to see them, but you think I would have probably liked this better if I was sitting at home? And it's not one of those. It's I saw it in IMAX and I was like, yeah, this is how I'm supposed to experience this. I think I don't think there's. I don't think you would get the same out of it even watching it and just watching it at home or whatever. I think it's
definitely worth seeing on the big screen for sure.
Yeah. So and it's kind of
the graphics. The graphics are next level. They're so good. And
I guess it's almost a bit of a palate cleanser before we hit the big blockbusters of the year. You've got your Avengers coming up. You've got Star Wars coming up. No one gives a crap about the Solo film, but or at least I certainly don't.
That's true. I don't know anybody who seriously does. So yeah.
So no one gives a crap about that. But you've got a lot of big films coming up, and it's almost a bit of a. It's a nice little introduction to that. Here's a nice breezy one to get you started, get you into the high octane action fueled stuff. Maybe we'll give you the smarter one with Avengers next month. Who knows? I haven't seen it yet, so who knows? But maybe that'll be a better. Maybe that'll be a kind of wow, that blew my mind, and it was actually really thought provoking at the same time. So who knows? We shall.
Who knows?
See.
Yeah.
So yeah, good start to the blockbuster season. I think you can almost count it as a start because there've been other blockbuster things, but not really. A Wrinkle in Time, I suppose, is considered a blockbuster.
I suppose, but really, in the shadow of Infinity War, I think everything else kind of cowers next to it right now.
Yeah, definitely. And Ready Player One, never mind.
I haven't seen it yet. I was going to go see it today before Pacific Rim, but then I was like, actually, I don't really feel like it. I've read the book, and I didn't particularly like it, so... Yeah, I'm not expecting to like this film either. And after hearing what you had to say about it as well, I'm, not super keen.
There could be a Ready Player One podcast relatively soon. I don't know. Depends on time. There's not enough time for everything I want to do. But So, yes. So, thank you for drifting with me for this possibly final Pacific Rim podcast, the final one we ever do. Yeah. Well, if there's no more of it, we'll just come back and talk about the first one again.
As I said before, I'm down.
Here's another 2 hours about the same film. And surprisingly, the conversation doesn't overlap somehow. So thanks for drifting, and thanks for honouring the legacy of this franchise.
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure.
That was our discussion on Pacific Rim Uprising. Thanks to YouTuber Little V Mills for the supplied music. If you like what you heard, then hit subscribe on iTunes, YouTube, or any major podcasting app. And join us on the next Kneel Before Pod.